Sorry about the interruption. Someone called while I was recording. So, we'll pick up where we left off. But she was like you, Jonas. She wanted to experience everything. She knew that it was her responsibility, and so she asked me for more difficult memories. Jonas held his breath for a moment. You didn't give her war, did you? Not after just 5 weeks. The giver shook his head and sighed. No, and I didn't give her physical pain, but I gave her loneliness. And I gave her loss. I transferred a memory of a child taken from its parents. That was the first one. She appeared stunned at its end. Jonas swallowed. Rosemary and her laughter had begun to seem real to him, and he pictured her looking up from the bed of memory, shocked. The giver continued. I backed off, gave her more little delights, but everything changed once she knew about pain. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't brave enough? She insisted that I continue, that I not spare her. She said it was her duty, and I knew, of course, she was correct. I couldn't bring myself to inflict physical pain on her, but I gave her anguish of many kinds. Poverty and hunger and terror. I had to, Jonas. It was my job, and she had been chosen. The giver looked at him imploringly. Jonas stroked his hand. Finally, one afternoon, we finished for the day. It had been a hard session. I tried to finish, as I do with you, by transferring something happy and cheerful. But the times of laughter were gone by then. She stood up, very silently, frowning, as if she were making a decision. And she came over to me and put her arms around me. She kissed my cheek. As Jonas watched, the giver stroked his own cheek, recalling the touch of Rosemary's lips 10 years before. She left here that day, left this room, and did not go back to her dwelling. I was notified by the speaker that she had gone directly to the chief elder and asked to be released. But it's against the rules. The receiver in training can't apply for it. It's in your rules, Jonas. But it wasn't in hers. She asked for release, and they had to give it to her. I never saw her again. So that was the failure, Jonas thought. It was obvious that it saddened the giver very deeply, but it didn't seem such a terrible thing after all, and he, Jonas, would never have done it, never have requested release, no matter how difficult his training became. The giver needed a successor, and he had been chosen. A thought occurred to Jonas. Rosemary had been released very early in her training. What if something happened to him, Jonas? He had a whole year's worth of memories now. Giver, I can't request release, I know that. But what if something happened? An accident? What if I fell into the river like the little fool Caleb did? Well, that doesn't make sense because I'm a good swimmer, but what if I couldn't swim and fell into the river and was lost? Then there wouldn't be a new receiver, but you would already have given away an awful lot of important memories. So even though they would select a new receiver, the memories would be gone except for the shreds that you have left of them. And what if? He started to laugh suddenly. I sound like my sister Lily, he said, amused at himself. The giver looked at him gravely. You just stay away from the river, my friend. The community lost Rosemary after 5 weeks, and it was a disaster for them. I don't know what the community would do if they lost you. Why was it a disaster? I think I mentioned to you once that when she was gone, the memories came back to the people. If you were to be lost in the river, Jonas, your memories would not be lost with you. memories are forever. Rosemary had only those 5 weeks' worth, and most of them were good ones. But there were those few terrible memories, the ones that had overwhelmed her. For a while, they overwhelmed the community. All those feelings. They'd never experienced that before. I was so devastated by my own grief at her loss and my own feeling of failure that I didn't even try to help them through it. And I was angry too. The giver was quiet for a moment, obviously thinking. You know, if they lost you, with all the training you've had now, they'd have all those memories again themselves. Jonas made a face. Oh, they'd hate that. Oh, they certainly would. They wouldn't know how to deal with it at all. The only way I deal with it is by having you there to help me, Jonas pointed out with a sigh. The giver nodded. I suppose that I could. You could what? The giver was still deep in thought. After a moment, he said, if you floated off in the river, I suppose I could help the whole community the way I've helped you. It's an interesting concept. I need to think about it some more. Maybe we'll talk about it again sometime, but not now. I'm glad you're a good swimmer, Jonas, but stay away from the river. He laughed a little, but the laughter was not light-hearted. His thoughts seemed to be elsewhere, and his eyes were very troubled. That's the end of that chapter.